So I'll record this, and unfortunately, when I record this, I'll have a little presentation I'll do, and then we'll get into what I'll do is I'll show the YouTube video and my commentary as I was recording the YouTube video, and then I spliced in uh, commentary, images, and that kind of stuff into the video. The video itself was only about a half an hour, so we won't be here long. And then we can comment during, or I could pause it if you want to comment during it, or we could talk about afterwards what we see and other comments and stuff. I'm glad Kevin's on because I used some of his images. If you've been paying attention to the section email, Kevin's done a bunch of images of the visible planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars of late, and done a spectacular job with it. And I've included some of those in the final production of this thing. So with that, let me get started. All right. So this happened on September 21st. I went to the site. Actually, I went to the site to test doing it, and it was such a good night that I said, "Well, I'll just do it. We'll just do this thing." So first, I want to thank Dave Pesch and his company for donating this service. It's been a tremendous gift to us to be able to use this on an unlimited basis. So thank you, David Pesch, for this system and the use of it. There's not many of us. I don't expect I need to mute anybody, but if you have a hot mic or something, don't be offended. I'll mute you. You can always unmute yourself. Just click the little microphone button at the bottom of the page or on your name on the left-hand side. And you can unmute yourself if you have this question. The chat's always there to type in as well. You can chat to the group. If you want to chat to somebody directly, just click their name and you can chat to them directly. If you're going to do much talking on this, like if you're ever going to want to do a presentation, I would encourage anybody who wants to do something like this or host a star party. I would encourage that you wear a headset. I'm wearing one. It eliminates ambient noise, and I can hear what people are saying a lot better. I don't get an echo out of my computer coming back and forth with a sound coming out and feeding back in it again as audio. So it works out well with headset. All right, so here's the credits for this. I did all the narration, and there was no deep sky selection. It was all planetary stuff. I've got some images that Kevin took in here as well. The telescope we're using tonight is the C14 now in its native mode. It's at its F11 mode. If you were here for the previous star parties, we were using the C14 in its hyperstar mode, which is f1.9. So much faster, a much wider field. It's actually a little more forgiving when you're doing imaging to do it in that mode, which really prompted me to do this to begin with. So I'm moving to the harder mode, if you will, by going to f11. And you got to be a little more accurate with your pointing and with what you're capturing. That kind of stuff. And so planets is a pretty good way to start in that, if you will, harder mode. And I used a bunch of software. So I used the Sky 10 to pick out targets and move the scope. There's a capture tool from ZWO, which I use the ZWO camera called ASI Cap for capturing the images that I did. I use OBS Studio to record all the stuff that I record. It gives me an option for capturing what screens I'm using and audio and that kind of stuff. And then there's some free software out there called Video Pad Recorder that I'm able to combine all that stuff into, add images and text and stuff, and then whatever I need to use out of Photoshop. In fact, I don't know if I use Photoshop at all for this one, but I used it in the past ones. All right, so for tonight, we're going to look at the planets. I don't know if you can read this, but the planets, this image is from Starry Night Pro for the night of September 21st. And you can see the planets are all lined up. Here's Jupiter, there's Saturn, there's Neptune, Mars, and Uranus, all in a row. It's not even 10 o'clock at night. It's 9:52 when I pulled this. And all those planets are all lined up in a row for us in the sky. And they've been that way all summer, although I'll tell you that Mars has moved. Mars is Neptune was between Mars and Saturn. Mars is in retrograde motion, moving this way. Is it retrograde? I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think it's still in retrograde. Then it's gonna start moving back to the east again. So where Neptune and Uranus were kind of between Mars and Saturn, it's the other way around now. And what we'll try to do is we'll move from west to east to try to capture these planets. I didn't try for Pluto. Pluto's is over here. I didn't try for Pluto. Maybe on another time I'll try for Pluto. And really, Pluto would not be very interesting. It would just be a dot amongst a whole lot of other dots.
That's all it ever is.
Yes, pretty much. You don't know that you saw Pluto till you look at the same field of sky again, and it's not there. All right, and I do have some breaking news. As of last night, we did not know who our speaker was for November, and Dave Bishop and I have confirmed that our speaker for November will be Larry McHenry. If you are a veteran of the Black Forest Star Party, you may have heard Larry McHenry talk. He's done a number of talks over the years there. I think I've enjoyed every one he's done. He's talked about planetary nebula, dark nebula. He's an avid amateur astronomer, and he loves to do talks. And he's going to do a talk for us called The Herschels and their catalog. So we'll learn about William Herschel and his sister and some of the work that they did well, first their history and then into their catalog of galaxies. And there's some 2,500 galaxies that they've cataloged. So should be an interesting talk, especially if you're an observer on Friday the 6th from Larry McHenry. I think that's it for my slides. So what I'm going to do now is I will share the YouTube video. If you want to comment, feel free to say something or text me, and I can answer you. But I will load the. We'll share the screen, and I will be quiet now of the.
They actually won.
Well,
here we go.
The game's not quite over yet, but that's it.
I'm gonna hide my video. Are you guys not hearing sound? I paused this. That's a problem. Hang on, let me see if I can do this differently. All right, give me a moment here. All right, just a second. I'm gonna load this differently. Apologize for this. Give me a moment here to try to load this virtual. Put it. All right, it'll take me a minute. I'm going to load this from my computer onto the screen. I tried to run a YouTube video, and actually, I'll give you a link after this. After this is over, to the YouTube video if you don't want to watch this on your own afterwards. You're heard, Roger. Now you're hearing sound. Did you hear sound from my video, or were you hearing just my sound? All right, regardless,
I was hearing some sound, but I don't think it was from the video.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So give me a moment. I'm transferring this onto a flash drive that I'm going to move onto this computer that I'm using for the for this virtual star party, and it's almost done.
Right. And I was trying to give you an email while watching the end of the Bills game.
Ah. And the Bills won.
The Bills won.
Yes.
I think that's when you muted me.
That's I think that's what I heard you I heard you talk there. It's a brutal world, isn't it?
Too much to do at once, and I'm retired.
Right? All right. All right, so I'm going to close this. And now. Now, are you hearing music? You hear voice now. You're hearing me talk about Jupiter?
I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, okay.
I had this problem before. Sorry about this, folks. It's a little frustrating to say the least. This was working the last time I did this, so let me try this again. All right, so I will try to talk. I will try to talk through it then. It's going to be hard to me to keep up with what my video talk was and what it was. So I've got Jupiter in the field of view, and I'm trying to find a focus where I can capture the moons and Jupiter at the same time. And I've got the moons and Jupiter, but I can't get it so that it's a visual feed and getting the moons and really see the surface of Jupiter. So this is about the best I'm going to get at Jupiter. Now we've just collimated this scope. I don't have a Barlow in it, so I'm not magnifying it to twice what it would be. And I'm certain that if I was using video, I could actually capture a lot of images of this and then get something a little finer. But I'm not. But you can see, typically, this is what you'll typically see through a modest telescope, is you'll see Jupiter and you'll see a couple of dark bands across the middle of it. And then one of the advantages I have with this system is that I can actually magnify it, and you can actually see a little more detail, a little more color when I do that. This wasn't a particularly fabulous night. It was clear, but I don't know that it was the best night to do this. And it certainly doesn't look like it's completely in focus, and maybe with a video it would be better. But that's what we were getting. And then so this is an image that I took. I tried to stack a bunch of these, and I did not debarrize the image. So this is the image that I got. And not very good. You can definitely see a couple of bands. You can't see any moons. And so with some, obviously I need a little practice doing this method of observing. And so Gary, this is a C14, and now I'm showing you the shot that Kevin took late September. I believe it was late September, of Jupiter, and he actually captured a transit of I think it was Europa. Am I right, Kevin? Is this a Europa transit?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. And he's got Europa. you can see Europa over on the right. You can see the shadow of Europa on the surface of Jupiter. You can actually see a lot of details in the clouds. And this is just one color. Typically, if you're going to do a color image, you're going to take 3 colors and then stack them up. And then here's what Kevin did. He used his Melior refractor. Is that a 6-inch refractor, Kevin?
Yeah, 6-inch f6.5, and I think I used a 3x Barlow to get about f20.
Okay, f20. So that's a nice size image. And you've been doing a lot of planetary over the last few, actually more than just the last few years. You've been doing it for a while. You got some nice stuff on there that you're doing.
Thanks a lot.
So that's Jupiter, and that's not a bad view of Jupiter for a modest telescope. That's a pretty nice view. And certainly if you get you practice a bit, and I intend to do a little bit. I don't know if I'll ever get as good as Kevin is, but hopefully. So then we'll move a little further west, and so this is the Sky program that we use. I have it connected to the scope, and I'll tell it that I want to go over to Saturn now, which is pretty much right next door, so it's easy to find. Type it in there, tell the Sky to show me where it's at, and then have it slew over to Saturn. The Saturn's pretty recognizable once you get to it. It's always a wow moment, especially for somebody the first time they're looking through a telescope. And so I changed the exposure for each planet because as we move away, or the planets are different brightnesses, I changed the exposure a little bit. So I left this at the same exposure I had for Jupiter, so you can see it's pretty dim. And so I got to pump up the exposure on Saturn to try to get a little more image. And I have an interesting program in. I have this program called Sky Tools 3, and if you put in what kind of camera you're using, what kind of scope you're using, it'll actually calculate the exposure that you want. So I had a chart of exposures to use for this, but I think I neglected to tell the software that I had moved the C14 from the Hyperstar mode to the native F11 mode. So I don't think my exposures were accurate. But there's Saturn, very recognizable. You can actually see that there's a shadow of Saturn on the rings as I'm futzing with the gain and the exposure to get a nice image of Saturn. Now, Saturn through a telescope is great to see, but it's tiny. You can definitely see the rings around Saturn. It's very tiny. And one of the nice things you can do with this scope is you can, and this setup with the camera on it, is blow it up so you can actually see a little more detail. You might actually see a hint of a little surface ring here, or not ring, but surface cloud deck here. And so I played around with this. I got to change the exposure around for Saturn to try to get a little more detail out of it. I actually stacked a bunch of images. I did not do well. I really sucked at stacking these things. And it is a wow moment. And as you typed in, Bill, it's one of the wow things in the universe that you actually see this through a telescope. You pointed at this dot up in the sky, and somebody looks through a telescope and says, there really is something out there. And it's so unique in the sky to see Saturn like this. And I don't know if I should be coming up to a better image of Saturn here shortly. So I think I was talking about distances in here. Jupiter was about 448 million miles away from us. Saturn is twice that. Saturn is over 880 million miles away, and so it is twice as far away, and yet to still be visible to us. And now, so this is a still image of a couple of images of Saturn stacked up. Not incredible, but that's a nice view through a telescope of what you'd see for Saturn. And I'll follow this up with Kevin's image, which is just absolutely spectacular. So you see in Kevin's image, I think this was with your your 10-inch mead. Is that right, Kevin? And you've got the shadow of Saturn on the rings. You've got the Cassini division in the rings. You've got some color on the rings. You can actually see the graduation of shadow on the rings itself, as well as surface features on Saturn. A pretty spectacular Saturn image that Kevin was able to capture, and with a little work of Photoshop and I don't know if you use Photoshop, use a couple other tools, but a little work with some photography tools, teasing out the details. Just a really spectacular image that pretty much anybody with some patience and time can do with one of the most beautiful objects in our solar system. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, this was I think F20 also. Basically, if it's really unseen night, you go lower and lower power to try and get something. But I think that night was steady, so it was F20. But lately, with the planets being so low, I've been shooting more at F15 or even F because the atmosphere just doesn't support it. Theoretically, if you have really great skies, you can go up to F30. But I don't think maybe I've done that once. But this particular night, I think, was unusually steady. And so it was, maybe like a 2-minute video, and then I usually take about 50 or 60% of the videos and stack the frames and stack those.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'll try next time, is to use video rather than trying to capture images, because you can get a lot more images to capture when you use video. Just a whole lot more that you could get, and you can get some really sharp stuff. You throw away all the garbage, or a lot of the garbage. You got some really nice stuff there. All right, so
Thanks.
Saturday. Go ahead.
I just want to say the steps really aren't too bad. So if you ever want me to show the group what I specifically go through, it's really pretty manageable. So I can certainly share that. If that helps someday.
Yeah, that would be great. That'll be great. Maybe we'll do a little star party and showing how you do, or not so much a star party, but just a little demonstration of how you set it up. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Thanks. All right, so there's Saturn and Jupiter, both very visible, and they've been visible. They started at sunrise earlier in the year, and now they've made it to the evening skies. When we get to December, they're actually moving closer and closer together. So it'll be interesting to see them then. But between Saturn and Mars is a big empty space, and in between them is Neptune. And I think I'm pointing out here on the screen that I tried to go to Neptune right away, and it didn't go really well. So I'm working with a narrower field of view at F11. And so I went to a star first and then hopped over to Neptune. And this is Neptune. And very easy to see that it's Neptune because it's not star-like. It is very blue. Pretty amazing. And Neptune is 2 steps further out than Saturn is. So Neptune is like something on the order of 2.4 billion miles away. It is really far out there, but because its atmosphere is a lot of methane and some ammonia, its reflection is very blue. And you look at this through a telescope, and I'm kind of futzing with the exposure here. It's really blue, and this is kind of really pumped up in power. I'll probably bring it back down to where it was eventually, what you'd see through a scope eventually. But I wanted to emphasize how blue it is. If you ever do see Neptune, and I would encourage you to find it, it's not that hard to find. It is very blue, and it's actually fairly bright. I think it was like a magnitude 7 or 8, something like that. So it's not ridiculous to find in even a small scope. But it's incredible how blue it is when you see it. If you're much of an observer and you look at planetary nebula, it almost looks like a planetary nebula. How blue it is. So it's kind of cool, but that's zoomed way out. So yeah, that's about what you'd see through a telescope, something like that. But it would be very blue. I don't know if you see blue there when you're looking at the screen. Yeah, that's about what you'd see. Good thing to look for when you're doing a planetary tour. I think we're going to make the next leap to the east. No, maybe not. I'm centering it. What am I doing here? Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to listen to my comments that I was making, and so I didn't want to image this. This was really too far to try to image. Maybe if I get a little better at my imaging technique, I might try something with Neptune. But it's not a ridiculously steady sky. It's really far away. So we moved on to the next one going east, and that's Mars. And Mars is incredibly bright right now. So Mars will be at opposition on October 13th. So in another 9 days, and it's getting brighter as it goes. I mean, it's very bright now. And so when I landed on Mars, it was pretty obvious I was there. There is a very, very bright object in my field of view. And I went from something that was 2.4 billion miles away to something that's about 40 million miles away. So this is the closest of the planets we'll visit tonight is Mars. Very, very bright in our skies. And because Mars is relatively close, and it does approach us every 26 months, so every 2 years, Mars and Earth have this close rendezvous. And of late, that's when we try to launch probes towards Mars. There's actually right now, I think, 5 probes heading to Mars that started early this spring and went on through the summer. Launched in that window to reach Mars with the least amount of travel, least amount of energy that would need to be taken to get there. So you see me with the telescope trying to center Mars, get it in the middle of the field of view here. Playing with the controls. And then once I get it in the center, we'll try to get the exposure right for it. Yeah. So because I still have the exposure for Neptune on, Mars looks a little overexposed. So we'll get Mars pretty centered here. I'm still trying to play around with the tools to get Mars in the center. And I'm pretty excited to try to get a look at Mars here because it's so bright and so close, hoping to see some detail using this scope on Mars. So I had my Sky Tools numbers down, and for some reason I didn't have a good number for Mars, so I had to play around with it to try to figure out the exposure. You see me playing with the exposure knob there, or slider, to try to get different right exposure in there. And I kind of like that diffraction spike. It showed that I had pretty good focus. If you saw that diffraction spike with the different lines coming out, I had good focus. All right, so I'm going to move forward a little bit here. So here's Mars with the exposure of about 1 millisecond. a little bit less. And you can see I've got a little, well, I got a little orange anyway. And that's the beauty of this, is that because the exposures are so short, I'm able to play around with it, get an instant feedback on what the exposure is, and play around with it till I get something that looks like what I need to see here. So you can see me actively working with it. And so here, this isn't too bad. I'm actually seeing some of that dark detail on Mars. Perhaps there's a hint of a atmospheric cloud up here on the northern hemisphere of Mars. I don't know if you're seeing that. So I play around with this for a little while to try to get more, to tease more detail out of it. Yeah. So I landed on about 900 microseconds as a good exposure length for that, to still see some detail on the surface and capture that beautiful orange color of Mars. So I played with the gain a little bit. Yeah. So Mars has two moons, Phobos and Deimos, and those moons are so small you'll never capture them in this kind of a video or image. They're just way too small. They're only about 17. I think the largest is 17 kilometers across. That's not very big. And they're tidally locked, and they eclipse the same spots on the surface of Mars every day, all the time. So it's not I shouldn't say that. They're not the same spot. They're not completely tidally locked, but they are very small. Not much to consider when you're looking at Mars from any kind of a telescope. So I zoom back out. So this is kind of what you'd see through a medium power looking at Mars. It wouldn't be high power, wouldn't be your lowest power either. Low power would be a little smaller than that, but that's about what Mars would look like, especially right now. It is very bright. In fact, it's almost alarming if you look into that southeastern sky to find Mars. It is very bright orange, and it is startling to see it. Like, what is that thing? And is it moving towards me or what? And you'll notice that it's not moving. It's not some airplane coming down. That is the planet Mars. Now I thought I had paused here and taken some images of Mars, but somehow I must have left them on the computer. I did. I left them on the computer in the big dome. And so this is Kevin's image of a couple of weeks ago. Actually, not even a couple of weeks ago. Last week, I think it was, of Mars. And you can actually see Syrtis Majoris here. You can see the southern ice cap. You can actually see that there are clouds in the northern hemisphere of Mars, and all kinds of detail. There's maps of Mars that you can use to see what you captured. I don't remember all this. There's a name for this. There's like an eye or something over here. I can't remember what it's called. The eye of something or other. But there's all kinds of surface features you can look for on Mars. And I think this was also with your 10-inch, wasn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I didn't have time after I did this to get your darker. You actually process this a little farther, and we're able to darken the dark features a little bit more, draw a little more detail out of it. But that's pretty spectacular. F20 10-inch to capture Mars in incredible detail.
Yeah, we're lucky that night, Dee. For once, the air was steady. I think as Mars is much higher in the sky, that helps so much.
Yeah, that makes a difference. That makes a difference. Gary's asking if the Olympus Mons. Yeah, you're right, Bill. It's kind of the eye of Mars, but there's a a feature called the Eye of something, and I can't think. I'm working blind here. I don't remember what it was. That was the Eye of something or other. So now I move it to Uranus. And this night, Uranus, I'm trying to think what time this was. I don't have a time on here for what it was. And so I slewed over to where Uranus would be. And I'll save you some aggravation. Uranus, I couldn't find it. Didn't land on Uranus. So I went to a star near Uranus to try to recalibrate the scope and then move over to Uranus. And then I couldn't find the star. So I went up. I was in the warm room at the big dome working on this, trying to figure out what was where. Couldn't find it. And so I went back up to the scope to see what was going on. I looked at the scope, and the scope was looking on the southeastern horizon into a bunch of trees. So I couldn't find Uranus because Uranus was in the trees. So that's where we ended our night. So we didn't get to see Uranus for that tour, but I look forward to trying to catch Uranus another time. So I don't think this will be the last of the planetary travels, because I want to try to get Uranus. I want to try to get a little more detail of those planets. But I wanted to thank Kevin, because I asked Kevin before we did this if I could use his images, and he was very eager to let me use the images of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars that he took. So, and I'm glad you're here to help us a little bit with the explanations of what you did there, Kevin. So great imagery, great stuff.
You're very welcome. I'm able to share them.
So that's really it. It was going to be a really quick night tonight. I'll put my camera back on. That's all I really had. Let me close this other thing. What'd you guys think? Did you enjoy that? It was a pretty quick. Solus Lacus. Thank you, Bill. That's the one. Solus Lacus, the Eye of Mars. So it was a quick night. I was actually there much longer than the half hour that whole video took. I was there. I tried to do some imaging of Jupiter and Saturn. I did take some images of Mars, but I think I left them on the computer there. I'll try to look at those again. But I'm inspired by Kevin's work, so I'm gonna try to do some more planetary imaging myself, and I might try video, because it seems like video gets you a lot more images to stack, and you can get a lot more detail with a lot more images. Good stuff. Glad to have any feedback. Anyone wants to talk? So we have this great site. Anybody else wants to use the site? If you're interested in using that the C14, we have a group of us that do that. You could shoot me an email privately. My email's in the newsletter. It's also you can actually even use the general email if you wanted to, say, Mark, I'm interested. Let me know, and I'll respond to you privately to get involved with the group. We're all amateurs at this, learning how to use that scope, and some of us a little better than others. Some of us, you're always learning on how to use this stuff. So it's not a one and done kind of thing. So glad to have company up there trying to use that stuff, or bring your own stuff out. I think I did catch Kevin out there one night. It might have been the night I did this. I was out there with Bob, I think, that night. We were trying to collimate.
Yeah, I think I was out observing nearby that night.
You were on the pad out there, I think.
Yeah.
That was fun. It's a great place.
I'd like to try the C14 sometime for video too.
Absolutely. It's a lot more aperture. You could maybe that's one we could demonstrate, do a demonstration with, if you want to try that.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, we could video it and then do something like this to do a little demonstration of it. That would be fun. Yeah, let me know when you're when you got some time to do that. I'm retired, so I could make some time.
Oh, fantastic! I appreciate it.
Eunice says, looks like an uphill learning curve. I'll stick to my binoculars and refractor. Nothing wrong with that. It's always good to see that stuff. Enjoyable Astro break. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I didn't. This didn't intend to be a long evening. So just a quick little hit on a little gathering of planets. I had hoped to catch Comet. I forgot the name of the comet. I think it was Kendall or something like that. But it's this was a couple of weeks ago that I had heard about it. It's kind of in Scorpius, so it was really a summer thing. I missed it. I should have gone after it before the September 21st. There was a comet to see it, and it's actually much dimmer now. It's like magnitude 13 or something now, but back then it was like a magnitude 7 or 8, something like that. So that's out of view, but another time. All right. Well, that's all I have, unless anybody wants to chat on something. Okay. All right. Lacking anything else, I'll give a last pitch for the November talk is Larry McHenry, who's will be our speaker for November on the 6th. He's going to give a talk on the Herschels and their catalog. It should be pretty interesting. There's a little history on William Herschel, his sister Caroline, and the catalog, and maybe some tips on if you want to observe that catalog. That's a challenge. There's a Herschel 400 group list, and then there's actually a whole catalog of about somewhere in the 2,500 different objects that they've cataloged. So they've done an amazing job. That's our talk for November. All right. If I'm going to be the only one talking, then I'm going to leave. Thanks for coming, everyone. Have a great Sunday night. Have a good week.